What's up, friends? Mike here from Mercado Airwaves. If you missed any one of our past interviews with amazing guests like future Hall of Famer and pound for pound best fighter in the world, UFC flyweight champion Demetrius Mighty Mouse Johnson,
It's another day at the office. I get to go out there and test my skill.
to award-winning producer, director, and actor Orlando Jones. Orlando, how you doing, buddy?
Hey, sir. I'm good, brother. How you doing?
And all the other interesting guests we've had on. Joining us today is director and writer David Ferrier.
Thanks so much, brother. I appreciate you having me on the show.
MMA legend Chael Sonnen joins us today.
Keep listening to your show. This is great. Thanks, my friend.
Just subscribe to us on iTunes at Mercado Airwaves. And while you're there, please like, review, and rate us, friends. It helps so much. We also have a Patreon for anyone who would like to support the show. Just visit us at patreon.com/Mercado Airwaves and see how you can get all of our interviews ad-free and before anyone else, and how you can get your business or company spotlighted on the show. Follow us on Twitter at mmercado2333. Like us on Facebook at Mercado Airwaves. Subscribe to us on YouTube, youtube.com/MikeMercado2333. And if you would like to see what we're up to behind the scenes, follow us on Instagram, MikeMercado2333. Thanks for listening and all the support.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for tuning in to an episode of Typing When Tipsy. My name is Nicole Mancha, and I want to welcome everyone back from my little mini hiatus. It's been really crazy in the Mancha Mercado household, and I was actually in Canada for a week. And I went to a couple of writing conferences, and it was really great, but I am definitely happy to be home. It's been a week, that's for sure. Producer Mike is on the show today.
Hello, folks.
And Lil Mowgli's here too, but he can't talk and he doesn't have thumbs. So we're going to let you assume that he's saying hello. So Mike, how was your week of bachelordom?
Yeah, it was fine. It was really busy. You guys can catch all the stuff we were doing while you were gone, wherever you get your favorite podcast, anywhere you listen to us here on the network. So it was fun. It was okay.
Did you guys miss me on our other show?
Yeah, it was interesting to do Murder Mysteries and more just Alex and myself. I mean, it was the Good Brothers, so that was kind of we had to figure out a different flow because he hosts the Good Brothers, and I kind of just go off of his lead.
Right.
But on the Murder Mysteries and More show, we kind of had to restart the open because we're like, oh wait, one of us has to open the show because I haven't opened up a Murder Mysteries and More show since episode 3. So I'm like, I forgot how we do this. I forgot what we tag or not. So, but it was cool.
Back when I was too nervous to open up the show, and now all I do is open up shows like a boss.
You sure do open up shows. What did you take a listen to the episode that we did?
You know, I got through about half of it before I lost all reception in Canada. That seems to be a thing there, where you're walking along the water, and all of a sudden, your cell phone reception just drops, and you're out of any sort of place to get any reception for 4 or 5 hours, and when it can catch up with it. And then I got a bunch of emails and text messages and all of this stuff at one time.
That's funny.
And I guess it's a thing there. Everybody knows about it except for us because we're not from there.
Yeah, I believe it.
So they were yeah, there's a lot of hot spotting all over the place, and then there's a lot of people who have free Wi-Fi, and I think Vancouver has their own specific Wi-Fi for people that they can connect to while they're there because it happens so often. But the wild thing was so we had this amazing cab driver that took us back from the airport, or to the airport from the hotel, and they were saying that they were second in the world for the most sustainable communities. The first one is Oslo in Norway. But basically everything is geothermal. They recycle everything. Nothing has one usage anymore there. It's all super sustainable. And even some of the buildings there that have been around for a really long time, when they're being rebuilt, they're being rebuilt with those community gardens up on top.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, it was wild. But I went there for a writing conference, which was awesome. And I learned a lot just in general, but I went to Portland first and then I went to Canada, and it was really cool.
Sure.
It was a really cool experience. So I'm glad I went. I was for sure ready to come home though.
What was your favorite part of the vacation?
Oh my God. Probably, honestly, I liked Portland, but I like certain neighborhoods in Portland. I loved all of Vancouver. So my favorite part was like you're literally in this big city, right? And then you look to the like right of you and there's mountains, like massive mountains that you actually can see through the skyscrapers. And that was probably my favorite part because you're so close to the water and so close to the mountains, and it just made it like this perfect view. I don't know. It was just a really, really cool experience.
Yeah, it sounds cool. It sounded like a really good time.
I did. So question.
Yeah.
I go to writing conferences now. Evidently, I do that. What do you think about like the podcasting conventions?
They've been doing stuff like that forever. I mean, conventions aren't anything new. It's just now they're popular for everybody that's not, that didn't do conventions. Video games have been doing conventions since the 90s. Radio's been doing conventions since the 80s. Like, the comics have been doing conventions since the 90s. Like, it's just now everybody's doing Crime Con and Writer Con and Potter Con and Pot Con. Like, it's all those things. Now people are doing them, but yeah, I mean, radio's been right now. This coming up week is a radio conference down in Vegas.
Have you ever been to one?
No, I'm not a nerd.
Well, it's funny that you mentioned PotCon because weed is legal there. And I honestly thought that my mom was going to lose her mind because randomly people would be smoking and she hates the smell.
Sure.
And it would like blow like right by her face.
I'm sure she loved that.
But she was like laughing because they have all these like catchy little clever names for all the stores and stuff. Yeah. So we were looking and trying to decide what was what. But that was pretty cool. But now, I mean, so you haven't done like the radio ones, but have you ever been to a convention at all?
I guess the auto show counts as a convention, but other than that, no, I mean, not really. That's not. So whatever, we're trying to get to Star Wars Celebration this year, the D23. That's in Chicago, but other than that, not really. I mean, you really can't do much at those conventions, especially like the mainstream ones. There's not a lot of room to do much. So if you go to Comic-Con, unless you're one of the main media people, you're not really getting to do a lot. You're still waiting online, and it's still a long thing, but what comes out of them is really cool. Yeah,
I think that was the best part for me was just kind of like going to the convention and meeting all these people and being able to kind of connect with someone.
Exactly. It's great. It's great for networking.
Yeah.
Even at the big ones.
And you know what? That was the biggest thing is that like I would definitely do it a little bit differently next time because I really want to go to the next one in San Diego. But like I learned how to do it. Because you kind of get there and you're super overwhelmed because there's all these panels and there's all this stuff going on. And, there's like 1 million people there. And I was easily one of the youngest people.
Sure.
There's probably a handful of us that were under the age of 50. Like, a lot of people there were much older. And they're like the original crime fiction fans. You know what I mean? Like fans of like Agatha Christie and Murder, She Wrote and all of that kind of stuff. So it was really cool for that, but it's also just in general, you get to meet all these authors. But next time I do it, I was telling my friend this, I was telling Katie, I was like, I would volunteer for more stuff because the last day I volunteered to help run a panel. So I was the timekeeper.
Nice.
I'm very proud about being the timekeeper.
That's cool.
But I volunteered to help out, and I didn't volunteer with a lot of other panels, but I was like, oh, it's okay. I'll just do it, I ended up meeting all of the authors, the moderator. They're all like the moderator was an author too. People who like gave me advice and gave me some, tidbits and like, what are you going to be writing? And that's awesome. You know what I mean? It was just such a great way because I didn't know anybody. A lot of these people that have been going for years. So they already have this like network of people.
Right.
And I'm like, well, I don't have a network of people because this is my first one I'm going to and I'm going by myself. So it was definitely that idea of like, if you work with people and if you like volunteer to do that kind of stuff, you really can get so much out of it that I think you don't necessarily expect to, which was really, really cool. And that's why I think we should go to a convention.
Yeah, no,
the
conventions
whole
are
murder
fun.
Mystery crew should go together.
Yeah, that's really fun. Maybe we'll do something like that. That's actually a pretty cool idea.
I just think it's one of those things where you have everything, right? You have like the amateur to the expert. And so you kind of get a little bit of everything when you're going. Like the biggest thing for me was asking questions. So I didn't really ask very many questions in some of the other ones because I just didn't know what to ask. In the last one, I was like, how do you work with world building? And any writers out there, world building can be super, super complicated because if you're set in the contemporary time, it's not that hard, right? Because we all know what the world looks like. But when you're setting it up in like a fantasy fiction, which some of my stories are, you have to create rules. Like magic cannot just be limitless. There's a reason that the genie in Aladdin can do everything except for.
Sure.
You have to have those rules set up, and you have to set them up early on so it doesn't come as a shock later on in the story. And so that was one of the best questions I asked, because they all, first of all, got really excited about it. And one of the authors, S.G. Redling, was talking about her stories, and she built all of her stories about vampires, but they're called the Nahan, and she's like, what if everything we know isn't necessarily true? So it's not, what if they're just, they don't really want to hurt people, but they have to. No, what if these are soulless, empty beings that have their own society?
Did they talk about when people have came up with those ideas before, though? So,
Yeah.
So to me, vampires have never been the Twilight vampires. They've been like the 30 Days a Night vampire. They've been Nosferatu. Like, I don't like originality. While it exists, something like that. When you hear somebody say it's like you got to establish rules and everything. Like, did they talk about like everybody steals?
Well, you know what? I think it gets weird because I think it's really a dangerous kind of topic to talk about stealing necessarily, because no ideas are original anymore when it comes to storytelling. You don't get something completely original, because even if you have, like, Harry Potter was considered an original story, it's still about witches and wizards, which is not original.
I mean, you could literally trace it back to what they did at Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit, like, and then tracking that even further to things back. Like, it just
they definitely talked about it, but I think her story came out of it during a time when it was the Twilight vampires, when it was Vampire Diaries, when it was like all of these torn
those first
apart
three books hit a certain time because they were very easy to read, and they were part of the Scholastic Fair, and the Harry Potter worked for a lot of reasons on top of the fact that it was well written, but it was also a genre that you can have fun with, but it really has thousands of stories being told in it. Like,
yeah, absolutely. And there was a lot of talk about how to create stories that have your own, at least, uniqueness to it and have a unique voice. I don't think anymore it's about having a brand new unique story, because a lot of stories are very similar. Now it's about having a unique voice when you're speaking, because you can have the typical, damsel in distress, needs a knight in shining armor, ends with a love story, or you can change the tone of it and not make it a love story or romantic at all, which is not as common. Most people want a happy ending, and so changing it and making it maybe less of a happy ending and more of just an ending.
Well, I mean, yeah, I get that, but if you're using other mediums, like, use an example, a different type of tone, like put your spin to it, like not just you do what Game of Thrones does, where you you like this character, so we're gonna kill its character, because whatever your favorite character is, we're just gonna kill him off. Like, Quentin Tarantino as a director has a certain type of dialogue that he uses. When you hear Tarantino dialogue in a movie, you could tell you're watching a Tarantino movie. How can you tell you're reading a J.K. Rowling book without knowing that it's Harry Potter? Like, I guess that's the big misconnection I have between writing and a visual media like movies or television, because books are everything that's going on in your brain and whatnot, and you making the imagination. But when you said, like, people want the love story and people want the happy ending, I mean, other than I just give people a swerve because wrestling's been doing swerves forever, you want the Rock to win, but Stone Cold wins instead. Like, what does that mean? You need to find your own voice, your own tone. Like, does that mean you got to find your own genre, that you have to be the M. Night Shyamalan that always has a twist ending? Are you the Tom Clancy where all you do is make spy novels and war novels? Like, what? Like, what does that mean?
I think more so what it means is, now 20, 30 years ago, the big focus was figuring out your genre and being a part of that genre, and that was your shtick. Now I think we're getting to that point where we can blend things. So nothing is just one thing. It doesn't have to just be a spy novel. They have these things now called romance suspense thrillers. and it's got a romance overtone. Like, the story is the relationship, but there is a thriller happening at the same time. So it's this blending of genres that allow the story to be more in depth and have more depth than necessarily more of a monotone thing, because it is harder with books than it is with movies, because movies are visual.
Well, what about Michael Crichton's Jurassic Park? It's two different genres. It's a science fiction movie, a science-based movie, but also a horror book. So, like, even as something as huge as Jurassic Park, like, they've been doing these crossover books from forever. Like,
but at the time they were put into a certain category. If you say Jurassic Park, I don't think of it as a horror at all.
But it is. Like, it's a horror book.
You think about it like that. But it's the idea is, like, they marketed it as a thriller. They marketed it differently than they would a horror movie. Think about how they marketed Us, and then think about how they marketed Jurassic Park.
The movie, but I'm talking about the book. Like, the book, Michael Crichton wrote a horror book. Like, what about, like, something like Jaws or Stephen King's books, where half of them are just author writing something, and we decide whether it's scary or we decide whether it's a thriller. Like, you know, I understand when you said that we categorize these things, but I feel like we've been doing these authors have been doing these crossovers for because they're just nerds like us that just do their favorite stuff. Like, all right, cool, I like a little bit of Star Wars and I like a little bit of Jaws. I'm going to put sharks in space.
I think authors have been trying to do it for a really long time. They haven't been able to market themselves as that, because the problem is that when you start mixing in with the publishing industry, publishers want to put you in a corner. Publishers want to say, this is what you are because I can market this, because this is marketable in this time frame, because we do go through ups and downs in the marketing and the publishing world, where thrillers are really, really publishable, or romances are really, really publishable. And so they're going to go down those things, and they're going to focus more on those things. And if your book happens to hit at that time, great.
Well, I think then it becomes more of a culture thing. It's like anything else in music, movies, television. There's more outlets now. So you don't need Scholastic to get you. You don't need the Penguin one to support you. Like, you could just be self-published, just like you could be self-independent in movies. Like, it's much more accessible now. I can make a PDF file with 80 pages, and there's my new novel. And if somebody wants to buy it, $5 on Patreon. Like, it's the publishing companies did have a lot of power, but I definitely think, like, you know, authors in their own right. I think it's an artist thing where we allow ourselves to be put in these corners because we're the struggling artists. Like there was no, you know, somebody like James Cameron or Steven Spielberg or these guys that eventually were able to break through, and even in the beginning they just made their best stuff, and they never allowed anybody to tell them no.
Right, and
that's a big thing. It's like, you don't let somebody tell you no.
I think that is a huge thing. I would caution against thinking about self-publishing as, like, that's what I would go to for any author, because self-publishing still has kind of a not as great view in the publishing world, because
screw the publishing world. I mean, look at but like before, I'll go on a tangent right now. We're independent right here. Like, we're not based. We don't have Complex. We don't have Collider. We don't have any of these major websites. You know, Bleacher Report, Turner, CBS, ESPN backing us up here. Like, we're the self-publish of podcasting, just like most successful people. It's that type of thinking that keeps people from ever expanding within that universe.
No, I think that's a really small kind of focus on it, because the thing is with publishing and with books and just in general, and like I've done courses on this, is that other authors don't look as highly on self-published most of the time. And that creates a really big problem for you. If you start self-publishing, there are times that you will not get traditionally published. And self-publishing, occasionally you make money off of it, but a lot of times you don't. So you can't support yourself as a self-published author, because the problem is you can come up with a great book, but it's next to the book that, you know, Anne wrote about her cat that she lives with.
That's literally everything else in art and entertainment. And the problem is, though, is when you go that small thing, it's small thing. It's a thing. That's the only way it should be. Like, there's no. You want to know who ends up being the next big? Literally, one of the biggest books in the planet was not an original idea. It was fan fiction about vampires having sex. And it became not only the most successful book since the Bible, but a huge movie franchise. And that was 50 Shades of Grey. So it's like, yes, Is it harder and there's more obstacles when you go indie? Of course. But you have the power then. And if your own community, think about that, like a community that disowns you or gives you a harder time or because you went a different route. Imagine if comedians or actors or podcasters or anybody got that kind of grief from their own community because they came in a different way.
The thing is I don't want to talk about it as a community as a whole because I can't speak for everybody. What I can say is that through what I've talked to from other authors, not all authors, but some authors, is that there is this kind of, because self-published tends to not have as many edits, you don't have the marketing, you don't have all the tools that you get when you traditionally publish, which means you either need to pay for them yourself or B, hope that you're a good enough editor to come out with something. And I've read books that are not traditionally published. There's a lot of mistakes. There's a lot of errors, and it doesn't give you the best look as an author.
Well, that's your thing. Like that's you putting your risk out there. Like that's not a thing against self-publishing. That's a thing against how much are you putting into it. If you're willing, like again, using us for an example, if you want to only put $5 into this, you're going to sound like you only put $5 into this. If you put real investment in it, you're going to sound like you do. So if you're self-publishing and you believe in it, you're going to put it all on the table.
If you have the money to do
or
that.
Or you put whatever it takes to get as much as you can and allow yourself that. And in that case, that there are mistakes, it's still out there. And look at, people are going to look past mistakes everywhere. Look at our politicians today. People look past mistakes. We look at our mistakes harder than the audience and the consumer does, always. If you mess up a word, if you flub up a sentence, if you were wearing the wrong shirt, if you were looking wrong in the background, if you were looking past the camera, that's stuff that we notice. The audience doesn't know that. And it's the same thing in writing. Like the only people who are, in the scenario in which somebody did what you did, where they were reading something and there was a lot of mistakes and they blatantly noticed it, two things happened. They were paying too close of attention or they were just that bad of a mistake. Because if your brain is able to pick up that type of little nuanced mistake, that's on you. You're looking for the mistake at that point. Like unless it's blaring, then that's on the person who put that out there. You put the shitty work out there. It's not because publishing is shitty. Publishing doesn't make something shitty. You make a shitty project that then goes out there, and if the community likes it or the audience likes it, it happens all the time in all different terms of media.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's hard for me to agree only because I think editing your own work can be very difficult. So I try not to give authors I have literally looked at the same paper that's 2 pages 15 times and I miss stuff.
That's what I'm saying. So it's like, and you're looking for it. So what I'm saying is like some of the grandma or the teenager reading your book or the pages, if they're into it, they're going to look past all that. It happens all the time. If you go to the years of literature in all aspects from fan fiction to comic books to hardcore novels, there's so many mistakes. Pick up a Charles Dickinson book right now, and I bet you we go through the whole thing. But once we get past all the racism and sexism, we'll get to the point of like mistakes. Like it happens everywhere. Like I think it's one of those. Just like every other medium, once you get over the stigma of how you got there, as long as the product is good, nobody cares.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely an argument for that. There were self-published authors there who did really well. It's hard because I have a few self-published authors in my courses and their work is bad. Like,
yeah.
It's bad. And
some people are just bad.
And I think that's where it kind of comes to this weird space that self-publishing comes into, because you have people who are really fantastic and do an amazing job. And then you have people who are really bad and their books are next to each other because that's just where they fall in the alphabetical line.
Sometimes I stand next to Jason Momoa. Life happens. Sometimes you're just a shittier project. Sometimes you're just the worst of the best. Like it happens. Like sometimes a Beatles album is next to ABBA. Like that stuff happens. Like you can't. Yeah, it sucks. But I question: is it better to be signed with Death Row Records and be part of just their label, or be Get past the void and the noise and be your own person. Have your own control.
Yeah.
You have your own fate. Like there is, like I think that's the thing. Like the idea of like if you ever wrote something and it's a short story self-published and an independent company wanted to buy the rights to it, and then they decided they want to make some form of media for it. It's you and them. But the chances of that happening, the chances of your book being published from the big machine, well, yes, you have the big machine behind them. At any given moment, they could sit there and be like, you know what? We just did a marketing test on it, and we just don't think it's going to hit the demographic we were hoping for. So what we're going to do is we're just going to put on the show for the next few years, and we're going to do some edits, and then maybe we'll come back to the terms with it. But until then, here's your $25,000. Thank you, and enjoy your next project. Or you self-publish it yourself, and you bet on yourself. And it either works out or the book was never going to get made anyway. Those are scenarios and things that happen in movies, music, podcasts, all the time. And, like, you have to be willing to put – because guess what happens if you do write the next Harry Potter as an indie publisher? Every publication is going to want to sign you. And now you get to decide, you know what? Nicole Mancha Enterprises sounds a lot better than working for Scholastic. More often than not, it doesn't work out that way. But – how many people become authors to begin with? So it's not like the other route is a guaranteed route. It's not like it's this guaranteed ticket.
No.
Like it's all Powerball stuff.
Well, and I think that's the biggest argument that not even an argument. It was the biggest discussion that we had in a couple of my classes. And maybe I'm just, and you know me, I'm a dreamer, but I'm a realist when it comes to actually making money. Like
Sure.
You have to work.
Yeah.
And people were like, well, I just figured when I published that I'd be okay. And I'm like, I'm sorry. There are people who are in TV for 20 years and have to get a job because shit happens.
Yeah,
and it's like, you can't expect to have a bestseller and then do nothing else for the rest of your life. It doesn't usually happen. A great example is Elizabeth Gilbert. Her novel was Eat, Pray, Love, which blew up. She has like 4 or 5 novels before that. You know what I mean? That people just really didn't hear about. And she was published. She was traditionally published, and she made money off of that, which was good because that is the one thing they do take care of the upfront, and then they also take care of going back and re-putting it out there for you. So that does help.
Sure.
It helps any author because you don't have to focus on it. They're going to focus on it for you instead of having to market your own stuff, because that is the problem with self-publishing is that everything is on your own. So the upfront cost, I mean, people spend $6,000 to $10,000.
The logistics aren't there.
Right.
Yeah,
it's very, very difficult. So, and the thing is I have some people who self-published and it was really great and they did a really good job, but they were like, honestly, they were like, the work was tenfold. Like the things that you don't even think that you need, you're like, oh, shit, I need that because it's, they're like, but you don't know it until you're in it.
Because it's hard. That's the thing. Like, to me, maybe it's just because I've been doing it since I was 20 years old. Like, it's hard for people to recognize you. It's hard to become part of the ether and part of the momentum of the universe. So, like, yeah. And then when you start talking about logistics of money, lawyers, copyright, it's hard. That's why there's not 1,000 Tom Clancy's. That's why there's not J.K. Rowling's or Tolkien's, or it doesn't happen because you have to be willing to put yourself there. Like, and those are the ones we know of. Then there's ones who make a living doing it. Who just make a living doing it. They're not breaking the bank, but they're also making a living doing it. How do they do it? By constantly hustling. It never ended. So, like, to me, that's what it always comes down to. It's like, it's just not easy. This isn't easy. I don't get days off.
No, I get it. Trust me, I get it. Like there is no days off, right? Because it's like if you're not editing or if I'm not creating chapters for my story, then we're not doing it.
Well,
we're not moving forward.
Like if I'm not getting guests, if I'm not recording, if I'm not editing, if I'm not producing, it's one of those things where if you're not moving forward, somebody else is. That it's not even a competitive thing. It's a life thing. Like people move, but life will move forward.
And I think people get very overwhelmed by the idea of self-publishing because there's so much work. Mind you, people didn't really realize when we started talking about these things in classes that going the traditional route is not easy either.
Yeah.
Like it's extremely difficult because first of all, to even get through the door to a publisher, you need to get an agent.
That's what I'm saying.
You need to sell yourself to an agent who will get your story, who then possibly moves you forward to a publisher. And once they move you to that publisher, there are edits that need to happen. There are all these things that need to go before you're able to actually get to that point of being able to sell your book. And then that itself, making the copies, getting things ready. And now a lot of times the reason people have started moving a little bit more to self-publishing or smaller companies is because they don't handle marketing for you anymore. They handle some of your marketing, but they don't handle as much as you do. Like, you have to go out there as well and market your book and sell yourself.
Right.
And that is really the daunting part,
Wait.
and I think people get overwhelmed.
But if somebody like in your case, it's much easier. You have a platform, and you could create your own platform. This is what upsets me about people. So if you're like a celebrity, right? Let's say you're a TV celebrity. You're not quite into the main movies, but you're kind of famous. The best way to market yourself, start a podcast. Start an Instagram video. Do something like that. So if you're about to self-publish your book, you know who's your best audience to get your book? Your freaking audience.
Yeah.
So
no.
like, market to them.
Well-
like, that's the point. Like, why? The fact that more people don't have podcasts, it's crazy to me.
Yeah.
It's the easiest thing in the world. It's the easiest way to market your stuff. If you have a real estate company, you should be doing a real estate podcast.
Well, and the thing is it's funny because I brought this up as we had to come up with ideas on how we would fund ourselves or how we would market ourselves. And I brought up podcasting because that's what we do, you know? Like, even though it's funny because we had talked about it the one time where I'm like, wait, am I like a podcaster, like an actual podcast? And you're like, yeah.
Yeah.
And it's like, I'm like, I don't even think of it that way. I just think of, I like to do this. I like to talk. So you've given me a microphone and said, have a way with it.
Yeah, no.
But someone on they were talking about things. They were like, well, because I mentioned Patreon. I was like, well, a great way to do it is to give, extra in your Patreon content that if you subscribe for $1, like, you can have access to it.
Right.
And someone said, well, I don't like asking people money for free. And I was like, first of all, and I kind of like went in on it because I'm like, listen, this is not GoFundMe to create this marketing tool. I'm like, and there's nothing wrong with that, but like, that's not what this is. I'm not asking you to give me money for nothing. I'm providing a service, and I'm asking you if you would pay for this. Exactly. It's content. It's providing a service. It's creating content, and it's giving you that door to be able to be a part of it that not everyone gets to be a part of. No one says you have to do it. It's, it's if you want to listen to it or if you want that additional content, then you get it. But my biggest thing was like, I'm sorry, if you don't think this is work, like, I have a good time doing it. That doesn't mean there aren't days when I'm like, I don't want to do it.
Right.
I don't want to sit there and talk, or I don't feel like dealing with you. And there are times like, breaking the fourth wall, not all of us get along all the time. And we still have to do the show whether or not we're happy or not. It's like, sit your ass down. This is the time that we do our show, and we're all going to do it together, and we're all going to put our game faces on because this is a job. This is still something that we are required to do because we have promised content. And that is something that, I was very honest about, but I was also like, I'm not asking for you to give me something for nothing.
No, yeah, it's a good point. But, it's one of those things where you got to leave people behind. If they don't get it, then that's their loss. Like, I'm not going to sit here and hold your hand and say, hey, this is how you should market yourself. Like, we do our stuff. We market, and we're successful. Shout out to Australia.
Shout out to Australia. Maybe that's going to have to be the next murder or so. We'll have to go over
maybe in a few weeks. Yeah, we'll do some Australia stuff. Maybe a dingo or a kangaroo.
No, I got a good one. I got it already banked.
Yeah, awesome. A kangaroo. I can't wait. Nicole, what else we got on this episode of Typing When Tipsy? I'm tired.
We're going to wrap it up because I'm exhausted too. Let me tell you, jet lag is real. I was up at 7 and it felt like 5 because it's a 2-hour difference. And so I had 3 cups of coffee this morning and then an Americano at lunch, and I'm still exhausted. But thank you, everyone, for listening. I know that we blather on a lot, but I hope you got some really good information from this episode because it is true. There are a bunch of different ways that you can go down. There's a bunch of things you can learn from conferences. And I highly, highly suggest that you look at them and take a look at what you are interested in. If it is for work or business or school, which is what I went for, there are certain conferences that will offer scholarships. So you just need to look and really look because they're not going to make it easy for you. But like, for real. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Thank you, producer Mike, for jumping in.
Thank you so much for always having me. I really enjoy it. What do you got planned for the next few weeks? You got any guest ideas? Without giving any names, you got any ideas?
I do. I have a few ideas. I think there's a few things that are going to pan out very nicely, so I'm excited about that. Cool. I apologize for my hiatus, everybody, now that I'm back from another country.
Sure. And no more finals?
No more finals for 6 weeks.
There you go.
And then we're back in it.
There
But
you go.
guys, we are down to the wire. I am officially 6 months from graduation.
Woo, yay.
I am so freaking ready.
And only 7 more years of being poor.
Thank you, everyone, for tuning into this episode of Typing When Tipsy. I look forward to talking to you next week, and have a great night.
Enjoy our shows? Follow the Mercado Airwaves crew all over social media. Like us on Facebook at Mercado Airwaves. On Instagram, Nicole is at Typing When Tipsy. Alex is at Mercado2121. Mike is at Mike Mercado2333. And our true crime show is at Murder Mysteries and More. And on Twitter, Nicole is at Typing When Tipsy. Alex is at Mercado21Alex. And Mike is at MMercado2333. You can follow the network at Mercado Airwaves. Follow our pop culture show on Twitter at Good Brothers Pod. Get us on the go by downloading our programs anywhere you get your favorite podcast, like iTunes, SoundCloud, Podbean, Stitcher, and other popular sites. Just search us at Mercado Airwaves. While you're at it, please like, rate, review, and share us with your friends. Visit us on youtube.com/MikeMercado2333. Click the subscribe and like button to get notified every time a new episode or interview is posted. Support Mercado Airwaves by visiting patreon.com/Mercado Airwaves, the home of our interviews with athletes and celebrities, which you can get ad-free and early before it's released to the public. Come play video games with us on Twitch. Twitch.tv/Mercado Airwaves Network. Mercado Airwaves is powered by Munch Art Design. Like them on Facebook at Munch Art Design. Voiceover work on Mercado Airwaves is performed by Josh Fox.
What's up, friends? Mike here from Mercado Airwaves. If you missed any one of our past interviews with amazing guests like future Hall of Famer and pound for pound best fighter in the world, UFC flyweight champion Demetrius Mighty Mouse Johnson,
Another day at the operator to go out there and test my skill.
to award-winning producer, director, and actor Orlando Jones,
Orlando, how you doing,
Hey,
buddy?
sir. I'm good, brother. How you doing?
and all the other interesting guests we've had on. Joining us today is director and writer David Ferrier.
Thanks so much, brother. I appreciate you having me on the show.
MMA legend Chael Sonnen joins us today.
Keep listening to your show. This is great. Thanks, my friend.
Just subscribe to us on iTunes at Mercado Airwaves. And while you're there, please like, review, and rate us, friends. It helps so much. We also have a Patreon for anyone who would like to support the show. Just visit us at patreon.com/Mercado Airwaves and see how you can get all of our interviews ad-free and before anyone else, and how you can get your business or company spotlighted on the show. Follow us on Twitter at mmercado2333. Like us on Facebook at Mercado Airwaves. Subscribe to us on YouTube, youtube.com/MikeMercado2333. And if you would like to see what we're up to behind the scenes, follow us on Instagram, MikeMercado2333. Thanks for listening and all the support.